So we're starting chapter 3 in your economy book, the factors of production. And so we're going to go through these factors, starting with prosperity does not grow on trees, onto the factor of natural resource, the factor of labor, the factor of capital, the factor of entrepreneurship, and achieving economic prosperity. So let's begin. We're just going to go through half of these things in this video. So prosperity does not grow on trees. So what does that mean? How do all the world's capital and goods consumers get produced? What does it take to make paper from a tree or an automobile from various metals and plastics and other materials? The production of goods is the result of a combination of certain resources. And so this is where we get the factors. These factors are factors of production, and we're going to go over these in details. What are these factors? National or natural resources, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Natural resources, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Plus, there's might be a fifth factor that they talk about, and that is basically the fifth one is an intelligent blending of these things. Intelligent blending of all these things together is another way. But let's just go over. We're just going to go over those four things in this chapter. So the demand for goods. Let's go up here. So the demand for goods tends to outrun the supply. We know that. And so some lack natural resources. Maybe they lack crops, or they don't have a forest, or don't have water, or they don't have enough capital. So you have to have all four of these things. So when we talk about economies, before we go over each one of these resources, we're going to talk about economies. There's quite a few economies that we can look into, but here we have the new economy that we have now is the cyber economy, and it's found chiefly on the developing nations and emphasizes the role that information plays is very important as people try to combine the traditional four factors of production in the best ways. So we have this cyber economy now, and we still are going back to these four things in the midst of developing our economy in a positive way. So it goes on here. Let's go. Here's a cartoon here. It says, this new Ultrabook has the latest Max Core processor and the new Manta HD display and graphics card. Plus it comes with the latest eWorks apps, including Design Force and Business, you see. And he's like, oh no, this is the new cyber economy. But anyway, when any producer, whether family, small business, or a large corporation or whole society, undervalues any of these resources that produce prosperity, they'll be in danger. So if any economy doesn't go by these four things and they disregard the entrepreneurship or a capital or something, they're going to end up in trouble. Economic success on a large scale or small scale depends on the intelligent combination of those four factors. And economics historians and anthropologists tell us that until a society learns how to combine the four factors of production, most of the people will remain in poverty. So learning how to combine those four things is important in a prosperous economy. So let's go on to the next. So we're going to talk about these economies. Even countries that are fairly well supplied with resources have developed efficient forms of production, and demand for goods tends to outrun the supply. In some countries and economic regions lack sufficient raw materials, so they may become deficient in this area. A country's prosperity depends about how much freedom the people have. Because if the people don't have freedom, and with these four factors, you'll end up with a problem, and the poverty situation will come into And that's why you see like a lot of communist countries having very poor people, right? A country's prosperity depends on how much freedom the people have, and that's a basis of economic prosperity. So we cannot undervalue any of these things or we'll be in danger. Those four things again: natural resources, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So going down here, we're going to talk about these different economies. So, and it says in many of the cultures of ancient history, as well as in some undeveloped places today, we find what's called a traditional economy. So what is a traditional economy? We hear a traditional economy is a system in which decisions involving production, distribution, and consumption of goods are based upon custom, heredity, and caste. So basically, traditional economy holds on to heredity or caste or custom, those three things. So you maybe go to India, it has a caste system. If you're in the lower caste, it's very hard to get out of that lower caste, right? And then you inherit whatever caste you are. So a traditional economy uses those things, the production and distribution and consumption of goods based upon the caste or custom. So that's traditional economy. So then we have the command. We have the command economy here, also known as the planned or directed economy. It's where a centralized authority determines the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services, as well as they control savings, investments, prices. It's government control, and the decisions are made by the government. Most of the time it turns into a totalitarian state. And this is where we have communism and socialism. They're command economy or directed by the government, right? So that's the second type. First we have the traditional. I always think the traditional more of a caste system like they have in India. And then now we have the command economy, which is that directed by the government, like communism. And then we have the free enterprise economy. And that sometimes is called capitalist, although capitalist is not a good name for it. But the free enterprise economy is a system in which people are free to make their own economic choices. Private control, as considered as capitalism, or a market economy, sometimes saying a free market economy. The government is not in control. And so, of course, some countries have a mixture of all three of the maybe or one or two of these, the traditional economy and the free enterprise, and or bringing in command. So there's a mixture of all of these in some countries, just saying that. But those are the three basic types of economies. So we have, again, go over it, we have the traditional economy, where economy depends upon custom, heredity, and caste. They do as their ancestors did. If you were in the shoe business or whatever, you'd still be in the shoe business, if whatever business your family was in. The next is the command, and that's directed by the government. They tell you what to do and what goods and services that you'll have, and they over control your savings and investment and all your prices and everything. And then on to the free is the word free enterprise, a system in which people are free to make their own economic choices. And so those are the three. And then, of course, there's the mixed economy. So let's go on to the next section. We're going to go over the factors. The first factor being the factor of natural resources. So what are natural resources? Well, it says here, I like the scripture that's written here. It says, yea, the Lord shall give that which is good, and our land shall yield her increase. So it's what the land yields. Those are our natural resources. So natural resources includes land and other raw materials from the land, right? And this factor is very essential for enterprises. if you don't have the natural resources, you're going to have to find out somehow to get them, right? So it's very essential. Land was the bigger factor in the past, but now more people may not be involved in agriculture, but still agriculture is important in producing food. But in the past, it was keep your land, and your land will keep you. So land was was considered so important. But during the Industrial Revolution, this changed in 1760, and it freed many workers from being in agriculture. A lot of the rural areas, they moved into the urban cities to work in the factories. And because also farming had a lot of new tools and saving devices, new types of capital such as seed drill and plows and stuff, so they didn't need as many hands, in the farming industry. But still, you got to say land is important. It's an important resource. Land is only cheap in areas. It's only cheap in areas that have very little population. You go clear out in the middle of the desert, nobody's out there and everything, nobody's living, then of course the land's going to be pretty cheap out there. Otherwise, land is pretty expensive. And then, of course, land does provide for a lot of other things too. Here's a picture here. Land is a primary natural resources. How about these hydroelectric dams? They're natural resources, and they use water, and it takes a lot, of energy there to produce, and this water provides this. So it was very ingenious to use this energy in providing energy for electricity. So here we have other types of resources. You can imagine clay. Even clay is a resource. To make certain pottery and stuff, you need clay, right? And then there's minerals, precious minerals, from uranium to copper, lead, iron, tin, silver, and gold. Gold was actually in the Garden of Eden. Also, there's petroleum is another. Natural gases and coal and fossil fuels, very important. Those are natural resources too. And of course, water there with the hydroelectricity. Also from animals and plants and all are natural resources. So it's really important, factor number one, that in order to prosper the economy, you need to factor in your natural resources. What type of natural resources can you rely on, in the midst? So number one, natural resources. So it kind of tells here, this Bible, in the Bible, that uranium, we talked about uranium, silver, some minerals such as copper, lead, iron, tin, silver, gold were mined in very early times. Gold was found in the Garden of Eden, and Tubal-Cain was born just 6 generations after the ancestor Cain. He was the instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. So we have, even in the Bible, it goes back to all these natural resources and how important it is for us to have these natural resources in order to get them. So number one factor, natural resources. So let's go to the factor number 2 is labor. All men were created to busy themselves with labor for the common good. John Calvin. So labor is number 2. So let's talk about labor. The factor labor for the common good. Labor refers to any work, whether physical or mental, that contributes to the production of goods and services. So know that the labor refers to any work, can be physical or mental, that contributes to the production of goods and services. The factor labor includes the assembly line worker, can be a short cook orderer, bookstore manager, secretary. All these things have to do with labor, don't they? They're all in labor. Labor, it says, although God, you think of labor, goes way back to the Garden of Eden. We know that. But all that God did curse the ground, as for mankind and Adam to till the ground. But labor is not a curse. We must find happiness in our work or not at all. Something to satisfy us in our labor. So prosperity comes from hard work. But in that hard work, if you can find joy in your work and, dedicate everything to the glory of God that you do, then you'll find working becomes fun. It becomes a hobby. It becomes something positive, especially after your work, you benefit for what you do. So here's a picture of the laborer there. He's probably fishing. So here, let's get down here, some Bible scriptures here too. Just scrolling down. So, prosperity and hard work, and many Bible verses. Let's go over some of these Bible verses. He becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. Proverbs 10:4. Wealth gotten by vanity shall be diminished, but he that gathereth by labor shall increase. Proverbs 13:11. For thou shalt eat the labor of thine hands, happy shall thou be, and it shall be well with thee. Psalms 128:2. You see, there's many scriptures that talk about labor in the Bible. So, in fact, the Christian and Jewish cultures are the most prosperous cultures in the world, and they're influenced by the Bible. The labor of free men and women is more productive than the labor of slaves, serfs, and others who are not free. That's another thing. That when you have a country where the people are free and they're doing the labor because they want to, you're going to have a different attitude, and you're going to have more production and they're more energetic to work than those that are made to work, such as slaves and serfs. They're not working, for themselves, or they're not working for God in any way. So there's a lot of other verses in the Bible. It tells right here. It says, it's going up to here. So this part says, free men and women know that they are laboring primarily for their own advantage and not merely for the gain of some individual or huge organization that directs them against their will. In communist country where it directs somebody to work something when they don't want to do that work, they pick what profession you will be in, and you don't want it to do that, Like Benjamin Franklin, he didn't want to make candles. That's what they said he was going to have to be, as a candle maker. Well, because of America's free enterprise, he became a scientist, he became a politician, he went into all different kinds of things, where in a society that controlled, they would say, oh, you have to be a candle maker. But anyway, that's the difference. Labor is most efficient in economies that offer substantial rewards for good work, like the Pilgrims of Massachusetts Bay. They indeed. And so there's other countries like Japan, Germany, Switzerland, Netherlands, Belgium, Canada, United Kingdom, and the United States are all countries that embrace free market principles now, today. Wages and efficiency of production are generally much lower in systems with command economies. Of course, a command economy is where the government's going to control. They're not going to pay you so well, are they? So, and there's also low productivity in those countries. You can take the difference. You can take, say you look at East and West Germany. East Germany was totally controlled by communism. It was in poverty. West Germany was basically free enterprise. And so when they brought down the wall between them, you can see Ronald Reagan bring up, what did he say? Break down this wall, He's talking about the wall of communism, and it did. And then what happened? You could see the difference between a free enterprise and communism right there. The communist side of Berlin was totally totally devastated by poverty, and the West Berlin was had flourished with prosperity because of free enterprise. See the difference. So let's go on. We're talking about totalitarian states, and the state, when they control things, they have to have huge prisons and concentration camps, and bring people in there to labor, to labor without wages, so it's, in economies that are controlled by a totalitarian state, they have command economies, and these command economies that are this assigned men and women certain states based on what they need. You're gonna do this, and then the wages are fixed by the government. And so free labor unions do not exist in there, although they have fake ones sometimes, like the Nazi Party was supposed to be a labor union, but it was a command type government, totalitarian under Hitler, right? So, but today there's more skilled labor, you're not just following the plow. Now we need more skilled labor, and skilled labor flourish in free enterprise countries, the free market. When labor enjoys freedom, it's free to, in fact, a person is free to bargain with their employees, ask, well, I want what kind of pay they need, what hours they can work, what conditions. Labor unions do this, but in the communist and command type governments, they don't do that. And those type of economies, they have no freedom. So, and it's slavery, even slave labor now. Even there's countries around the world that still use serfdom and slave labor. In a lot of different countries that even still have slave type environments. And you go to countries in Africa, and Muslim countries have all these, in the midst of, they still believe in a type of slave labor. So here we have some pictures. Both employers and employees profit from the freedom of labor found in the free market here, and you have the cost of obtaining skilled workers is more than the offset by the resulting efficiency. So having a free market system is very efficient, and plus everyone is doing their American dream, their heart's desire, that they can go into anything they're interested in. We can go into any type of vocation that you're interested in America. So let's go. Okay, I kind of went over all of this here. It goes on here. It says, it talks about, we talked about the totalitarian state. So it says free labor unions are forbidden in command economies like China, Vietnam, and other communist nations. Unions may survive in name only, as they did in Germany under the Nazis, but they are directed by the government. So totalitarian regimes often maintain huge prisons or concentration camps. We went over that too. So it's just the difference there. Like it says, labor without natural resources, capital, and entrepreneurship would not be able to support human life. So although labor is important, probably one of the most important of the factors, you still have to have natural resources, capital, and entrepreneurship. They all go together. So let's go on to, we have time to the factor of capital. Let's see here. Yeah, we'll go on to capital, and then we'll stop for the next video. It says the factor of capital. All people, however fanatical they may be in their zeal to disparage and to fight capitalism, implicitly pay homage to it by passionately clamoring for the products it turns out. Isn't that right? So a lot of people in countries, different countries may say, or even in America may say, oh, capitalism, that's terrible. But guess what? they surely like to buy the stuff, don't they? So you live in America and you're against capitalism. Well, if you didn't have people, the businesses in the capital, you wouldn't have your cell phone, you wouldn't have your TV, you wouldn't have a lot of the supplies. So you may as well go to a country that does not have much capital, which would be in poverty, right? So let's talk about capital here. There we go. So capital. Capital are goods used to produce other goods. You know that. Money can buy capital, but to an economist, capital means tangible things, tangible tools or goods that produce other goods. Bank deposits, stocks and bonds, insurance policies. These are documents proving that a holder has part in the productive enterprises. Yes, but still, as an economist, they consider capital. You talk about capital being more of things, machines, buildings, tools, vehicles, desks, computer, office supplies are all capital. So let's go on here. The subsistent economy. So what's a subsistent economy? It's an economic system that provides barely enough to keep a society alive. So subsistent economies have broken down from time to time because of droughts, floods, wars, disasters, and many thousands of people have starved and died because they don't have the foundation of capital to provide more. Subsistent means they don't have large factories. They don't have a lot of producers or capital goods. Capital being those tools that produce. They don't have the tools. They don't have the tools for farming. They just, the subsistent farmer just kind of farming in his own garden. They don't have the tools of tractors and combines and all these things. So capital is very important. Otherwise, when a drought comes in and you don't have capital to produce more food, you're going to be in trouble. So here's in many places productivity is hampered by the lack of efficient capital tools. You see, this is subsistent farming. It don't have tractors and those things. You may have heard of revolutionaries who denounce capitalism as an unjust and oppressive social system. But actually, capitalism is not a social system or a political system or a philosophy or a religion. So what is capitalism? Capitalism is an economic structure that allows private households and businesses to put together the capital or the tools necessary to operate productive enterprises. So no matter what sort of government a country has, capital is absolutely necessary. It's a necessary factor in production. In that sense, all countries with much industrial development are capitalist countries. So when you say capitalism, all countries are capitalist. I mean, even in China, to build a factory in China, they have to have capital. So we're talking about capital in itself. But capitalism does, however, take on different forms under different types of political systems. In North America, countries of Western Europe and other places around the globe, most of the necessary capital is furnished by private individuals. That's the difference. Capital is produced or is furnished by private, not the government. This type of capitalism, which is found in the United States, is called private capitalism. So in the United States, we have private capitalism. This is the system in which the majority of nations' capital is owned and controlled by private individuals and businesses. Now, let's think about China. Most of the necessary capital is supplied by the political state, the government. And economists call this state capitalism, and it's a system in which the owner of much of the nation's capital is powerful and centralized. And this centralized apparatus is called the collectivist state. Communist state, I call it. So it says anyone who owns producer goods or owns a share of some business that produces good is a capitalist. Even if his capital is very small and simple, and maybe those who own stocks and bonds in the company and have life insurance, they can be called capitalists. But this usually means that the investor's savings are used by companies. So, in the midst of all this, capitalism does flourish by these things, and you can call them as capitalists, but capitalism takes a different turn when you talk with an economist. But in the United States and similar countries, many millions of people are capitalists, simply meaning they own some share in capital goods. So if you own shares, if you have your retirement, and as you put forth your retirement, your account, and it's invested, then you are a capitalist. That's the way it goes. You will be considered a capitalist. So let's go on here. We covered most of this stuff already. Going to go into Robinson Crusoe, and I think I might go into that in the next video because we're getting here. But it says, because capital is always and every way hard to obtain, people who own capital are paid for the use of their capital. In developed countries, most of the owners of capital do not work in the business that use their capital. Just the owners of the natural resources should be paid for the use of the property, and the people who do physical mental work should be paid for the labor. So the people who supply capital should be rewarded for the use of their savings, without which there would be little production. So see how it all works. Capitalism is a little different than the word capital, but you need capital. So anyway, we're going to go on and we're going to talk about Robinson Crusoe and how he was a capitalist. You guys, I don't know if you read that. It's in your English book. But it's quite a deal. What is Robinson Crusoe about? And we'll find out. But it's about a man who gets stranded on a deserted island, and how he keeps alive, and how he gathers the goods to live a life there for 28 years. So let's stop there.